All right. Welcome everyone to the Business Clinic 2020, which I've got stuff popping up on the screen. I don't know what all this stuff is. Okay. Originally this was gonna be a part of our Business Clinic 2020 on April 13th, I think, something like that, when we were gonna do it live. And so we've had one session dubbed the Business Clinic 2 weeks ago. We'll have this one today. And then 2 weeks from today, 2 weeks from today, we will have the last and third installment of the Business Clinic as well. And I may say something about that. But anyway, we will get started today, and I'm going to turn this meeting over to my friend Ron Davis with Distinctions for Life, and he's going to be moderating the panel discussion. So Ron, carry on.
All right. Thank you, Mike. This is a little different than what it would have been like if we'd have been doing a panel, but it's not that different. We have 3 guests today, and what we're going to do is I'll have them introduce themselves in just a minute, and I have some questions prepared, but mostly we'll just kind of wing it as we go and follow up with what everybody says. If you're not one of those 3, if you could mute yourself, that'd be good. And we will take questions. If you have a question, if you would enter it in the chat over on the right-hand side, and we will try to get to all of those before the end of our time here. But if we don't, we'll still have them around, and maybe Mike can follow up and send something out afterwards or something. I don't know how many questions there really be, but if you have one, put it in the chat, and I will be paying attention to it while our guests just they don't have to pay attention to that. That's my job as moderator. So we have the 3 guests for this particular panel are in no particular order: Will Tippin, Tammy Reese, and Chris Jeter. And I am going to go through this and ask each of you to introduce yourself, who you are, what your business is, and how you came to be doing that particular business. So Will, let's start with you.
Okay, my name is Will Tippin, and we have Abilene Plumbing Supply. We've actually kind of switched up the name, and it's now under APSCO, which is short for Abilene Plumbing Supply. And we do plumbing, waterworks, and construction specialty wholesale throughout we now have 4 branches. So we have Abilene, Brownwood, Stephenville, then we launched one out in Southeast Dallas and Kaufman. And as far as coming to do this, after I finished getting my MBA and coming back to Abilene, was working in the family business, and then just had some different directions. And this is my wife's family business. So I'm a glutton for punishment and jumping into family businesses. So I jumped back over here and started trying to figure out, hey, how do we take what's been, a mom and pop local store, and how do we keep growing it and adding different things to grow it into different territories and different industries. So that's what we've done.
All right. And Tammy, can you tell us about you and your business and how you came to be doing it? Not hearing you, Tammy. I know you're unmuted.
Now, can you hear me?
Yeah. Yeah, I can hear you.
My deal is I own the Flipping Egg here in Abilene, and I started it about 8 years ago. But before I owned a restaurant, I was a computer programmer and did that until I retired, I guess, eight and a half years ago, almost 9 years ago.
Long time no see, Tammy.
Oh, 2 hours.
Yeah.
Okay, he's gonna have to wait.
How did you go from being a computer programmer to owning a restaurant?
Oh, okay. I forgot what the question was. Sorry. So when I was 15, I went at my hometown in Goldthwaite and decided to go work one summer, and went to a restaurant. And I thought, ooh, I like to cook, and I needed a summer job at 15. You know, back in the 1800s, you were hired at 15. So went there. My first 2 weeks, he made me paint shelves, and I fell in love with the restaurant business for some crazy reason when I was a painter. I don't know what that was about, but eventually I always wanted to own my own restaurant. And after programming, computer programming, traveling the world, I thought this is what I want to do. So I jumped in it and started from scratch.
All right. I muted myself and then asked my question. Chris, can you introduce yourself and your business and tell us how you came to be in it?
Yeah, Chris Streeter with Service Master by A-Town High Tech. We clean up the disasters. We do all the dirty work no one else wants to do, basically. Man, how I got in this industry, that's kind of a long story, but I'll keep it short and sweet. Now, I remember getting out of the military here locally. I was stationed in Dias, and didn't really know what I wanted to do yet. So I worked for a tree cutting company. I worked for a kennel. I worked for, half a dozen other little companies. And this particular industry, I was actually working for a company for. And I remember pulling that wand, cleaning somebody's carpet one day. And I said, man, I am not going to be doing this for the rest of my life. 20 years later, I'm still here. So, so that's how I got into the business. And I do love what I do now. It's not always, the work's hard, but overall, it's very enjoyable.
All right. Let's see. Mike, do you want to do your announcement right now? You'll have to unmute yourself, Mike. Nope, Mike is not going to get to do it. There you go. Well, you're unmuted.
Okay, I'm working on it. Hang on. Okay, next Monday, this lady is going to be our guest speaker. She's Melissa Vinson, and it'll be 12:15, just like today. And so it'll be the same process, but she does a lot of work with people, especially women, encourage them in business and ministry. And some of you may have known about Melissa. So anyway, I just want you to know about that, and wanted to kind of get that word out there for the moment. Then the other thing is, let me see if I can pull this up. Okay, hang on a second.
To offset the losses people are facing during the COVID-19 crisis, many government-assisted programs are being made available to small businesses and their employees. But if it's all too overwhelming and you need more information, Allied Employer Group is here to help. Contact us at coemployer.com or 325-695-5822. We'll provide.
We're only hearing that. Is that all there is to it? Is hearing?
Oh,
Wash
sorry.
your hands. If you're sick, stay at home. If you're healthy, still stay at home. We're all in this together.
Okay, sorry you could only hear that. I'm testing that. Mr. Jim Talent is online, and he sent me this video. When we started the business clinic, the company that Jim works with is Allied, and they actually had decided to help sponsor the business clinic. So I was going to try to play that for you. I'm going to have to work on that a little bit, Jim. Sorry about that. But in 2 weeks, you'll be hearing from Jim, and some other people that he works with, actually talking about an addition to this discussion on employees and companies and what the current rules and stipulations are and all of that. So we'll look forward to Jim in 2 weeks. So, okay, it's back to you, Mr. Ron. So I'll mute myself.
Now I'll just get distracted by something else. Okay, so back to our guests. And I am unmuted. Okay. Can you tell us sort of what your employee situation is right now? So how many employees do you have? I guess this is one of those instances where we can't avoid talking about how that has changed in the last month, one way or the other. So if you could tell us how big your business is, how many employees you have, that kind of thing, and what impact this has had on you. Chris, why don't you go first? We'll go the other direction this time.
You can start with all the good news first, then, huh? Well, we've been blessed. We've actually picked up in work during this time. Not only do disasters not wait for this event to be over with, they still happen, whether it's in your home or a business. So we've still been doing that, plus the COVID-19 cleanups. So we've been a lot of the confirmed cases around town, a lot that I cannot mention. People still want to be discreet about it. But just to give you an example, we clean the entire, one that has been publicized, is we clean the entire DRI campus.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as employees are concerned with us, I could use about 6 more. We've got 23 employees currently, and we are growing.
All right. And Tammy.
All right. Can you hear me?
Can hear you.
Before this happened, we were running with 28 employees. Most of them, probably 80% was full-time, 20% was part-time. And then we let everybody go. And then about, let's see, on that Friday, we were shut down. On Monday, we came back up with 3 employees. And then about 2 weeks later, came back with, I'm running right now probably about 18 employees. But we normally if we were up and going, it'd be about 28 employees.
Okay. And so you had to let go everybody, and then you were able to sort of, as you ramped up, I assume, to go in delivery, you started bringing people back.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, I'm going to ask you some questions because you're in the restaurant business and I'm curious.
Okay.
So this was, I guess, the people you've brought back are all sort of back of the house, right? They're people from the kitchen and that kind of thing. And your wait staff, your front of the house, those are all still gone, right?
No, I brought back half and half.
Okay.
One of the reasons is we went curbside, and some of my employees said, hey, I can't make it on X amount of dollars per hour. I need to make tips. And so I said, hey, we're doing curbside. We're doing delivery. Some of them came back and delivered. Some did curbside, but I probably did half and half.
Okay. And so you are doing delivery as well. So you brought people.
I was doing delivery through the delivery, like DoorDash, Menu Hoppers, Bite Squad, and all that. For about 2 weeks, we did delivery ourselves. And then the other delivery services came and said, hey, let's do it for you, because we got too busy to do it ourselves. And we did that.
Okay. All right. And Will, what is APSCO? Is that how you say it?
APSCO, or Abilene Plumbing Supply. Well, Jim would love to know that I am considered essential during this time, but so we kept working, we kept serving. People are using their restrooms at their house more frequently, so things are happening there. The plumbers are still needed. We have about 35 employees amongst all 4 branches. We as well are growing. We're looking at had conversations to add 2 more people in one of our other branches, 1 in one of the branches, and then looking to add 1 or 2 here in Abilene. So we're trying to grow and service our markets in different ways. So it did slow down our business. We probably had, I would say, about a 5 to 10% decrease in sales. Much of that has been due to the cities. The plumbers and the contractors have continued to work, but the cities closed down, so they couldn't accept product. So all the areas in the waterworks stuff where we sold into the cities, they wouldn't even be accepting product. We couldn't call on anybody there. So that's where it hit us. But now we expect, as they open back up, that they have to resupply because they've been using all their products. So.
And so you said that you're down about 10%, but you're still looking to hire. Are these hires that you were going to do before?
Some, yes. Some are opportunity hires. So a couple of them are different. So we service municipalities in our waterworks division, but we also there's a secondary side to go into the contractors. And so there are some people that are frustrated with their current employers and wanting to come play with an independent instead of a corporation, and they do contract sales. So they would add a new layer to what we do.
Okay. So that is something that we've heard a little about, is that this can be a good time to find people if you're looking and you have the need, because there's so many people out of work. But often those, I guess, are specialized skills that you might have trouble finding regularly, but now even those skills have been let go. Have you found that to be true?
We are hearing some of that. I think similar to what Chris is probably dealing with. There's a lot of people that are educated didn't go into our line of work, didn't go into plumbing, didn't go into electrical, didn't go into cleaning sewers or things like that. And now I believe some of these high school and college students are starting to kind of reconsider and go, wait a second, there are some other industries that maybe we forego and didn't think about, and those are some industries we should consider. One of my employees, his son is in college right now, and he's at home doing his college online, and he's working some at the shop. He's worked for us some during the summers, and he's starting to kind of contemplate, hey, maybe this gig that dad has isn't quite as bad of a deal.
Right. And Chris, you were nodding your head. Do you want to chime in on that as well?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, nobody ever grows up saying, hey, I want to be a carpet cleaner or, suck up water for a living. But these are essential businesses, and everyone's had this focus for the last, 15, 20 years on college and not going into different trades. So I think this is something that's definitely going to turn that around. This is a great eye-opener because the people that are still working right now are the tradesmen. They're all considered essential.
Yeah, that's true.
Ron, can I say something about that?
Yes, absolutely.
So I am the chair of our local workforce board here, that we have 19 counties. And I'm glad to hear that, because we have been working toward, in the last 2 years, getting out in the high schools and telling these kids, hey, college is not for everybody. And if you don't want to go to college, there are jobs out there in plumbing, electrical, carpet cleaning, whatever. And we hired, the state gave us a grant for 2 years to send out people to these high schools, and they're called counselors. Now, that's different from the counselors that are at the schools, and they're going out and showing what other jobs there are available when you graduate high school, not college, it's jobs. And with those guys saying that makes me go, hey, people are getting out there and doing this. So our local workforce board is really pushing that in the last 2 years.
That's interesting. And then go ahead.
I was going to say, Ron, just attaching to that, one of the things I've pushed a lot is and people don't seem to think about it. I've talked to some trade schools, and they cut plumbing out of their trade schools because people aren't talking about plumbing. Unfortunately, if you get at 18 and started working under a plumber, within 8 years, you would have your master's license. You're 26 years old, and you can start your own business and go out and service people into their homes and take care of them and do a great trade. But people look at it and think that it's just not, it's not a sexy industry. And so people don't want to be involved in it. But if you went out and you're willing to work, in 8 years, you could have your own business and make really good money.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting that you say that about plumbing, because hasn't that always been sort of the traditional joke job that the plumbers are the ones who make really good money?
They make really good money. I mean,
Yeah.
you can start at a plumbing job without knowing anything and make $11 to $13 an hour. And you're doing overtime. And once you get to your journeyman, you're up to 16, 18, and you can go up from there. So yeah, you can get paid to learn, you can have no college debt, and you can have a job where eventually you could have your own business. Pretty good industry.
Yeah. 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 On a related note, the disaster underneath the disaster that most people haven't been talking about, well, but we in West Texas are used to. Are you seeing an impact from the oil field on employment, on people coming into the market, not just because people got laid off because of COVID, but because the oil field is starting to have to scale itself back rather dramatically? And any of you can answer that one.
Well, I've always got applications out. We're always accepting applications. I'm getting a bunch more oil field related applicants. But I think right now they're more content on just collecting some unemployment while they can, hoping that industry will turn back around and they'll get their job back. So it's never been a good source for us for labor. Mainly because they start out so high. We can't compete with that. So, it takes time. We pay well. We pay, it's kind of a scale, kind of like the journeyman's, the trades. But man, I just can't start out $20 an hour with no industry knowledge whatsoever. So they don't typically stick around long for me.
Well, and you kind of, they kind of tell you up front, hey, we're coming from the oil field around here. They tell us, and it's hard to train someone knowing, hey, in 3 months they're going to leave. And so it's kind of like, you're a great person and all like that, and I'd love to pay you, but in 3 months, I want somebody for years. So that's when you kind of battle a lot.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing. I worked in the oil field before I switched. That was my grandfather's business in the oil field. So then I came over here and I had seen the trends. So to me, it's very rare that I'll even really engage in a conversation with somebody from the oil field, because I know that the moment they come calling, there's the oil field and a couple of companies out there, I know they have mass layoffs and then they have mass rehires, and it's just not worth me having that conversation.
Right. Speaking of employees, what do you look for in them? Yeah, let's start with that. What are you looking for in people that are coming to you?
I'll start out. I normally look for the things that I can't teach, or I don't want to be responsible for teaching. So initiative, that's a big thing. I want to know that someone has initiative. So we ask our questions based on that, because that's real important for us. Our industry is ever changing. And what I mean by ever changing is what we do day to day changes at a moment's notice. So I need someone who can take the initiative and really understand what we do before I start investing heavily in them.
And are you finding that out? You said that's the questions we ask. How do you find out whether or not they actually have initiative?
So we hire utilizing DISC personality profiles, and because we also want to make sure they're going to be a good fit for that position. But it also, it does, it's so many things. This helps us communicate better, helps us learn more about that individual that we're communicating with. But we're really looking for the initiative. I don't want anybody with industry knowledge. I'm going to teach that, but I want I want the people that are going to have the integrity, the initiative, the responsibility. Some of that comes with experience. Some of that we're willing to wait a little bit for. But the biggest thing is, does this guy have initiative? Does this lady have initiative?
All right. Tammy, Will?
Well, mine is kind of like multitasking. We look for multitasking. And when we hire, we usually give you, let's say I hire you, I'll usually give you 2 days. Hey, come back in 2 days and all. And I hate to say this, but in my industry, I will be lucky if you come back in 2 days, not just because you might get another job, just because today you needed a job, but tomorrow you go home and you're with your friends and you might not need a job. So we'll hire somebody and it's a 50-50 shot whether or not they show up the first day. I hired somebody Friday and they said, hey, give me the weekend. My grandma has a birthday. And I think grandma had a birthday like 2 weeks ago also. But, and I'll show up Monday and hadn't seen him since. But we try to do, I haven't found any personality tests, and I'll probably talk to Chris after this going, hey, because I look for that, trying to figure that out, because, the fit and stuff. But sometimes I'll be talking to someone in an interview, and I'll grab the salt, pepper, ketchup, and I'll put them in order. And I say, okay, during this interview, if I say pepper, ketchup, salt, I want you to put those in order. And immediately, if I'm talking to you or you're talking, and just see if they can multitask and concentrate, or whether they go like, oh, okay, now what'd you say? And because things around here, you're constantly talking to people and stuff just to see if they can keep that in order. It's probably a stupid test, but it kind of tells me whether or not you can listen and focus at the same time and such. And in our industry, probably like everybody else's, is a safety hazard too. If, something I need to tell you, hey, watch this or that. And so I just want to see if you can communicate at the same time, or if you're a person that goes squirrel every time and not pay attention.
That's interesting. And you have a specific requirement and you've come up with a test for it. That's really good. I did hear a story once about an interview, and whenever they had an interviewee come in, they would offer them something to drink and they would take it and they would give them a cup, like a plastic cup or a paper cup. And then at the end, they would find out what they did with it. Did they just leave it sitting there and expect somebody else was going to take care of it? Did they say, what should I do with this? Or did they go and put it in the trash themselves? And that kind of showed, they looked at that as showing paying attention and caring. Yeah. So
that's a good one.
Yeah. Will, what do you look for in employees and how do you find it?
How do you find it's tough? My main focus is on character and integrity. I feel like I can teach pretty much anything else, or my guys can teach anything else, but I can't teach character and I can't teach integrity. And so I look for those. And then I also look for, hey, how do they fit within our team? Like the culture that we're trying to develop here of, this teamwork and this culture, do they fit well, or are they going to be just kind of a rub? Or are they a culture killer? And you can usually determine that pretty quickly when they work for you, but then also just through conversations with their current coworkers or their bosses. Got a guy that's starting at the end of the month, and it just felt right. Just in sitting down talking to him, you could tell he would fit into the culture that we're trying to create. He seemed to have the work ethic. But then following up with his boss, and his boss like, actually, if I could talk him into staying, I would, but he's moving. And so you're getting a really good employee in him. And so it was really positive when I was talking to the boss. And so, but I start with character and integrity, and then I go from there.
All right. So now that you've gotten someone, how do you keep them? What do you guys do why should someone work for you? And how do you communicate that they should continue to do that? Who wants to go first?
I'll get it. So when I used to be manager when I did some computer programming and stuff like that, and I would have a meeting with each one of my employees when I lived in Dallas. And that was a white collar job. Now I'm working in a blue collar job. But I'd have a weekly meeting. Hey, and I realized years ago, how can I make you successful? because I wanted my boss to say, hey, how can I make you successful? And how can you make, I looked at how can I make my company successful? So here I took that initiative and I talked to each one of my employees down to the dishwasher and say, we talk once a week and I'm like, how's it going? And I'm not a type of person to get into your personal life, but I'm like, how's it going? What do I need to do to make you successful so the company is successful at the same time? Because if my employees are not successful and they're not helping the company be successful, it's not going to work out. But I need to help them be successful at the same time. And I hired a hostess the other day and I said, what do you want to do in life? And she's like, you know what? I really want to be a physical therapist. And I said, how do I help you become a physical therapist while you're working here for me? And she looked at me strangely like, what? And I said, no, seriously, let's talk. And you could just see her look on her face like, seriously, you're going to help me do this? And I'm like, yeah, why not? Why would I do that? So it's getting to me to keep my employees, if I engage with them one-on-one and stuff, I keep them. If I don't, you can just see them, move on and stuff like that. And I'd rather keep employees, and especially good employees, than to lose them.
All right. Chris?
Yeah. So the reason initiative is so big for us is the way we keep employees is we spend a lot on training. We average about $6,000 a year per employee. In my industry, it takes a lot to become a good, solid technician. It takes on average about 5 years of experience just to become a good, dependable technician. So it's initiative is so important for us. When they show that, then I'm willing to make that investment, and it's a significant investment. I'm talking, these are equivalent to what people spend on degrees sometimes over a 5-year period. We have one school. Just the school itself alone is $6,000. That doesn't include what I'm paying them while they're in class. It doesn't include their meals, their hotel, their travel there and back. It gets pretty expensive for us. So by making that investment in them, paying for that education, I tend to have very little turnover.
All right. We don't have any questions in the chat. People, if you have questions, put them in the chat. Well, so what are your biggest challenges with your employees or have been maybe that's a better way to ask this question. What have been challenges that you have overcome related to employees, and how did you do that?
I can start with one that I've dealt with. One of the things that I've struggled with is because we went from a mom and pop store and we've been kind of growing, people tend to always come back to the owner or whoever's in charge. And I've actually removed myself from aspects to where I'm physically not here at times. And what I've done with that is forcing them to make some decisions within some boundaries that they have, forcing them to rely on their ability to solve the problem or to work with a team to try to solve the problem. Because the more they rely on me, the less I can actually focus on the business and the more I'm stuck in the business. And I've got to get myself out of the business so I can really grow it. And so that's what I've really tried to focus on, is removing myself from different aspects of the business so that they can learn and grow amongst themselves so that we can grow as a company.
All right. Jamie, Chris?
Great point, Will. Yeah, that's key for any small business for sure. That transition point where you have to start working on your business instead of in it. We had similar issues earlier on, and I learned very, very quickly I can't be everywhere. So yeah, teaching our employees how to deal with these situations, that's always a challenge, especially with me choosing not to hire experienced people. It's working out better. I think it works out better in the long run. It takes a little bit longer to get back to this point, but it's definitely key when we're able to build our employees the way we want them. I sound like a assembly line, I guess, but anytime you get someone with experience, you tend to take on their bad habits as well. So if I figure if I start fresh, and it's a bigger investment for me for sure, but in the longer run, it's worked out so much better. So
I think mine is when an employee gets very, very comfortable in their position. Sometimes they get so comfortable they forget the responsibility. And so the responsibilities just don't get done. And I'm kind of like, if you don't do it, I'm not going to do it. I got too many other things to do. And that's hard. And I agree with the guys is mine is kind of like I have to be gone too. And people make solutions. They come to me with the problems all the time, but I want them to figure out the solution themselves. And we see that a lot right now where people come with problems that don't have a solution. I'm like, okay, now what's the solution? They might not have the best solution. They might have a great solution. But I'm constantly, what's the solution? How do you think we're going to fix this? And there's lots of stuff, everybody goes and eats at restaurants, but there's a million things that happen in the background of restaurants that people don't understand. That's how, we face the same situations like every other company does.
Right.
yeah, it's also a great point. Start to answer questions with questions, like get your employees thinking, and then less dependent on you.
So one thing that immediately comes to my mind on that is that if you're going to want your employees to take initiative and to do things, how do you handle it when they screw up? Well, you can go ahead and answer that one, Chris. Or either one of you.
Okay, I was just going to say that a lot of it is just sitting down and having that conversation engagement, kind of like what Tammy was talking about, is you sit down and have the engagement, but then also creating boundaries around what they are and are not allowed to do. So like some of my employees have the authority to adjust prices at the counter to a level, but there's boundaries on that. They can only go so low or they can only go so high. They have to stay within the margins that we put. And some of my guys have the ability to go much lower than others to go get the business because they're bidding larger contracts, larger jobs. So creating those boundaries for them. And then when they mess up, just kind of going, okay, let's go back into why we aren't there. What do we need to do to fix that? And sometimes it's just they didn't understand the ramifications of their decision and because they don't understand the whole process. And so having to explain why we don't do it that way.
Okay.
Yeah, boundaries is definitely key. We have this talk quite a lot with our employees. My job is not to tell them how to do their job. My job is to provide them the tools and resources so that they can do their job. So long as I set the boundaries, they work within them. When they step outside those boundaries, then that's when we have to have a talk. I will put this out there. My employees know for sure, it's actually in our handbook, but some of my employees, all my employees, they can be responsible up to $1,000 worth of damage. So if they make a mistake that I feel, let me back that up. If I feel damage was caused due to negligence, we're going to have a talk and they're going to feel some of the financial burden that me as a business owner, we as business owners feel, up to $1,000. We don't enforce that all the time. Because it can really be bad for morale. So I pick and choose those times very carefully. But they are talks that we need to have. We have a $370 UV light that some of our technicians use on a regular basis. Well, when the technician puts that on the back of his bumper for whatever reason and takes off and loses it, well, that was a poor decision. Where does that tool go? You got a case for it. You got a hip. You got a thing for your hip. You put it on your belt buckle. So we talk about these boundaries and these systems because they're there for a reason. And when you go outside those, somebody's got to replace that light. How are we going to handle this? Sometimes I'll split it with them 50-50. Sometimes if it's bad enough with neglect, then they can fork out the full amount. So I think that's a way to hold them responsible too. They tend to learn from it more when they feel the same pain sometimes as we feel as business owners.
I like how you said to feel the same pain as we do, because it's kind of like, hey, we paid for it, and then you decided to do something about it and stuff. Why am I paying for it? That's the way I do my employees, is that, hey, if you mess up, then it's going to cost you. And I feel like that's the only way for people here to kind of learn, hey, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm not going to make the little bitty mistakes and not think about it and such like that. In the restaurant field, you've got to kind of, people come from different restaurants, and so different companies and stuff, and they have different rules, and they get by with things and steal food and stuff like that. And so it's kind of like here, I'm like, no, we don't do that. So some people come in going, whoa, this is, stricter and stuff.
Ron, just one other addition in that. What I've tried to do is, before I came on board, we didn't have any of our salesmen, nobody was on any kind of commission. And then I read a good book not too long ago, but it was called Skin in the Game. And it just kind of reminded me, and it made me look at, there's only a few people that truly have skin in the game, whether it's upward or downward. And so I've been implementing, we've got about now 8 to 10 guys that have some form of commission in everything that they do as they serve their customers. So if they could increase their income through commission, or if that customer brings a lot back, or they don't pay because they only get paid after the customer pays. So if it's a bad customer that's not paying, or that customer brings back a lot of product, they're not getting that money. So there's some skin in the game for those guys. And I feel like this generation of workforce wants to have a little bit more control over their own destiny. And so by giving some of those guys some control over their income and their own destiny, even though they don't own the business, they have skin in the game and interest, and then they want to stay apart and they want to be a part of the team.
All right. I think we're running up on the end here, Mike. We did have one more question that came to me that we kind of answered a little bit, but I wanted to give Mike a chance to do an outro or end the call. I'm going to turn it back to you now, Mike.
Thank you, and thanks to all of our guests today. I appreciate you all taking time and sharing with us about your business and what's going on there. And thank you, Ron, for moderating this, which he does so well. I have tried to make a poll. I'm going to try to pop it up here. If you guys could, if this works, I'd appreciate your input on this. And while you're thinking about that for a minute or so, I know with all the challenges with the health scares and all that kind of stuff, some people not be willing to do this, but and who knows what the end of May is going to bring anyway. But if some of you had attended at my house about 2 months ago before all this started, just had a quick little cookout. And if you thought you'd be interested, I thought it might be a great way to sort of jump into June. We've been doing all of this stuff on online here for the last 5 or 6 weeks, or whatever. And so it would help me to have some sort of idea if anybody was interested in a kickoff like this going into June, as to whether I need to be programming for online content in June or not. So anyway,
Mike, you said that the meeting you put up earlier is in 2 weeks. So what's happening next week?
No, the meeting with the lady, Melissa Vinson, she is going to be next week.
Okay.
And she's what we would have been called the second Monday speaker that normally. And then the following week, Jim Talent and a lady from his office are going to present for us the third installment of the business clinic. And then that will take us all the way through the 18th of May. Then the 25th of May is Memorial Day. And I was just curious if anybody would be interested in doing that. But are you guys seeing the poll thing?
I already did it.
Sorry,
Should point out that our speakers have put their contact information in the chat. So if you guys want to get in contact with any of them, that is in the chat as well.
Hey, Ron, Mike.
Yeah.
I just want to also mention anyone who's interested, if they go to my servicemasterabilene.com website, if you click on my consulting page, you can learn a lot more about DISC. Anyone who takes that, I'll be able to see the results. Just reach out to me and I'll be more than happy to go into that further. But I also teach that as a value-added service to a lot of our clients at no charge. So if y'all are interested in learning more about this or doing it with your employees, just feel free to reach out to me at any time.
Very good. Well, thank you. Thanks to everybody for joining us today. I don't know what that means.
Anybody know what a workshop?
Oh, there's a question. Tom wants to know, does anybody know when barbershops might open?
And who?